Someone said to me recently that they always tell their students that in order to write an artist statement, you need to learn how to bullshit. And I felt really sad about that. And I reflected about it for a bit. And I think the opposite is true for me anyway. I think that the act of writing an artist statement is kind of like a BS detector. It's sort of like shining a spotlight on your practice and on yourself to see if you're really clear about what you're doing. And if you can share that with other people, like the people who are viewing your art, to help them get closer to your work as well. So I just thought it might be an interesting experiment to do together to write an artist statement now, as in this week, even before you need it. Like maybe you're not applying for a group show or you're not trying to get a grant, but maybe what you're trying to do is just get clear on your work. And so I think it would be a really useful exercise to do a writing of an artist statement that helps you understand yourself better and even understand where you want to be going. So maybe it's even an aspirational artist statement. Okay, I have two tips for you that I think will help with your process of writing your artist statement. First of all, I suggest that you go online and find some of your favorite artists and go to, if they have a gallery representation, go to their galleries and find their artist statement that's listed on their galleries. And I noticed as I've looked through some of these gallery websites that not all of them have the artist statements. And some of them have them mixed in with a bio as just sort of like this big thing. But the key that we're looking for here is find, let's say, 20 artist statements that are either of artists that you like, or you might go down a rabbit hole, like you're in this gallery and you like how they formatted the website to have the artist statements really easy to find. So then you could just like, oh, I like this person's work, random person, read their artist statement and copy and paste it. So copy and paste 20 or more artist statements in a document and read through them. And the reason why you're doing this is a combination. You're just gonna like let all these artist statements wash over you, until you kind of get tired of them a little bit. Sort of like let's say like you're on a committee to accept an artist in your show or something like that. And so you become a little bit jaded as you read all of these statements, because then you're putting yourself in the shoes of maybe a jury who's going to be reading yours. So what are some phrases or ways to write that you're noticing that you don't like very much? Or is there anything feeling a little bit too long, or perhaps a little too self-indulgent, maybe too self-congratulatory or too unclear? Notice all that stuff and tell yourself, like, do you want to be like that? Notice what you do like. I really love artist statements that are relatively short and clear and very specific. Like they tell a real story about their practice and themselves that really speaks to the work in a way that it just feels like it's a nice little bundle, like everything that they say in their statement really resonates with what their art looks like. And it just feels so nice and cozy to be able to really understand what that person's going through, or what they're going through, what their work, what their work is all about. So, okay, so that's my tip number one. And I think it's really, really, really helpful. And then tip number two, I never thought that I would be saying this one, but here we are. I have never used this before, but I wanted to try it, and I wanted to try it for a certain reason. Today, for the first time, I opened ChatGPT. Now hear me out. Okay, so I write. I'm a writer. I like to write. And so I've never really even felt the urge to use it. But I pulled it out because I wanted to see what would happen if I took my most bare bones, basic things about my practice, like color interactions, you know, structure, composition, you know, just things that really mean a lot to me in my work, community, connection. And yeah, so it's just like a list of a very short list of words, and I included my mediums that I use, oil and acrylic, and then so I went to ChatGPT. It's just like the free version. I just went to chatgpt.com or whatever it is, and then I said, write an artist statement in first person that includes these words, and then I listed all those words. And then it wrote something for me, and here's what it did for me. It was like when you're talking to a friend who means well, but they don't really get you, and you tell them something personal or whatever, and then they reiterate it to you, and it's clear that they are really a little off the mark. And then in the act of having to re-explain it to them, like, okay, what I mean is, da 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 da, suddenly you are further clarifying for yourself what you really need to say, right? Because if you didn't include that sort of re-explanation, that means that any person reading your artist statement would have probably maybe even misread what you were thinking, like ChatGPT did. So think of ChatGPT as like your clueless acquaintance. So I'm going to give you one example of how this worked for me. Here's a sentence that my clueless friend thought that I meant. Okay. My practice revolves around oil and acrylic paints. My practice revolves around oil and acrylic paints. Well, it doesn't really, does it? It doesn't revolve around, it doesn't. It revolves around something else, but not oil and acrylic paints. But okay, my practice revolves around oil and acrylic paints, mediums that allow me to capture the complexity of human experience with vibrant intensity and nuanced texture. It's like I'm wording around with my word noodles. I don't know. It's like, I don't know, y'all. So, what that did for me was it helped me see, oh yeah, right. I need to explain, why do I use both oil and acrylic? Well, I have a very specific reason why I use both oil and acrylic, and that is because color is so important to me that certain pigments are expressed differently in oil and in acrylic. And so, for example, there is a certain intensity of quinacridone magenta that acrylic paint provides that you cannot get with oil paint. When I need my quinacridone magenta to just be like electric, I'm gonna need to get my first layer to be acrylic. So, and then there are certain things with oil that acrylic simply can't do either, in terms of color, especially with the more opaque pigments. So, like the cadmiums and stuff. So anyway, that's just one example of how ChatGPT has no idea what it's talking about, but it also it presents some interesting ways of saying things, which then I will probably completely change. Like it sounds really legit, but it's like we're just trying to sound legit for legit's sake. It's not really doing anything. Okay, because I mentioned the word structure in my list, here's what it says. By layering colors and manipulating structure, I aim to evoke a sense of collective presence and mutual support. I see what you did there. Okay, well, I don't necessarily always layer colors, and I definitely don't layer colors to evoke a sense of collective presence. Now, at the same time, somehow that there is a little bit of truth in a way, because there is something I do with color in order to um, create a sense of the collective, but it's not layering colors. And then what does manipulating structure mean? You know, like what? By manipulating structure, yeah, like I aim to evoke a sense of mutual support. So I see they're like, ah, yes, if I use structure, yeah, mutual support. That must be the reason why Anne uses structure. She uses structure because she's really into community. And so I realized then, oh yeah, okay, cool. So I did not explain to my clueless friend why structure is so important to me. And the answer is, I really love like a really strong value structure. In other words, there's a sense of structure in my composition but the reason why I use it has nothing to do with mutual support. It has to do with giving the viewer an opportunity to take sort of a walk through the composition in different ways in order to have different color experiences along the way. And yeah, I got to figure out a way I want to say that. It's probably not going to sound that much different from this. But yeah, like I'm really into structure, but it doesn't have to do with mutual support. But it's really helpful to have somebody say it wrong. And so in a way, yeah, you could use this tool to basically mess it up for you so that you can fix it. So that's one idea. Oh yes, and then the third tool, which yeah, probably goes without saying, but the 3 quizzes that we just did together these last 3 weeks on this channel. The whole purpose of these quizzes is to start prepping our minds to think about how we want to write our next artist statement. So you can go back and look at all of your notes from those quizzes and maybe look at all of those artist statements from online. And you can maybe circle words that feel like they're really important to you, whether they are definitely the words that are just absolutely essential to your work, or even in the back of your mind, if you're thinking more aspirationally, like if you wanted to circle a couple of words where you're like, I think this is where I'm headed, that's great. And then put it all together, maybe just write a list of words before you even start writing sentences, you know, to try to put it all together, and just kind of look at the words all together and see if it's taken you somewhere mentally. And then you can start jotting something down. And if you'd like, you can also concurrently be putting it into ChatGPT and let it do its clueless thing. And then yeah, and then start writing something again that feels a little bit more authentic to your work and to yourself and why you're doing what you're doing. So, and then try writing it down below. See what happens. You know, like see what happens, as in see what happens inside yourself. And then see what happens when you go back to work on your art again. Like thinking about what you have to say about your work. Does that do anything to how you approach your work? I really think that artist statements can be a real gift to ourselves. And they change over time, all the time. In fact, they probably change every time because they're often needed for different things. Like this grant is going to need you to sound more academic. And that show is going to need you to sound a little bit more approachable because people are just going to be, you know, shuffling through and looking at your work very quickly. So let's have the most authentic, clear, and brief artist statements that are no BS and all awesome. Okay, let's do it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to reading your artist statements.